Well, hey, what's going on to everyone in our Oak Creek Franklin location, everyone joining us online, and to everyone in Greenfield? It's great to be with you today. If we haven't yet met, my name's Tyler, and I serve as our campus pastor here at the Greenfield location of the Ridge. And today we are kicking off the second half to this great series that we've been in over the last few weeks called Relationships on Purpose. And since it's the start of the second half, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give us a little halftime analysis of the first half, so you can call me one of the Manning brothers, as we kind of get started. But really, the big idea of this series is that great relationships, they don't happen on accident. They require a plan and a purpose for us in order for them to be great. But the good news for us is that God wants us to have really great relationships. So he gives us a plan and a purpose that if we follow and put in place, it helps pave the way for us to have great relationships. And really, God's plan and purpose for our relationships comes to us from a passage that is driving this series for us. It's written from a guy named Paul who's writing to this church, and he tells his followers, he says, here's what I want you to do. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, meaning Jesus sets the bar for us. We follow his example. And when it comes to relationships, we see that Jesus gave of himself for us so that we can have a relationship with him, which means we can follow his lead and give of ourselves for others so that we can have a great relationship with them as well. And the way we've been describing it is like this. It's like, imagine you're in this relational tug of war with this other person where you're trying to pull them on your side to get them to do whatever it is that you want them to do. But to give of ourselves for them, just like Jesus gave of himself for us, here's what this looks like. We're going to make the choice not to pull on this side of the rope to get them on our side. We're going to drop the rope and walk over on their side to give of ourselves, to humbly go to them in order for us to have a good relationship with them. In fact, what we've been saying throughout this series is that this just paves the way for us to experience more health in our relationships. And even if you're joining us today online in Oak Creek Franklin or in Greenfield, and you wouldn't call yourself a follower of Jesus, I want to encourage you to put all of this into practice and just check it out for yourself to see how this actually brings more health into your relationships. I think as you try it, you'll discover another reason why you may want to consider becoming a follower of Jesus. But throughout this series so far, what we've been doing is we've been looking at what does it mean to drop the rope in the context of different relationships. And so we've talked about parenting, we've talked about marriage, we've talked about dating so far. If you missed any of those previous weeks, I really want to encourage you to go onto our YouTube channel or subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can get caught up that way. Okay, halftime analysis over. Let's go ahead and kick off the second half of the series. And here's how we're going to kick this off. I'm going to share with you a part of a list. And for some of us, this is going to feel really fun. Others of us, this is going to feel like group therapy. Whatever it is for you, hopefully this is helpful. But I'm going to share a part of this list for you that's going to share some maybe annoying behaviors, maybe some things that drive us, a little upset, and if this gets under your skin at all, this habit or this behavior, here's what I want you to do to blow off some steam. Just give me a big round of applause wherever you are. Oak Creek Franklin, we want to hear a round of applause from you. Online, wherever you're at, give a round of applause, or maybe type something in the comments like saying, yeah, that drives me nuts. But if this habit drives you nuts, just let me have it. Big round of applause. Okay, here's the first one on this list. Drivers who drive slow in the fast lane. I love that you guys didn't even let me finish that statement. And you guys were just going after there. In fact, I'm with you. I'm on my horn of like when they're like, get over it. This is what this lane is for. Let me go fast. All right, here's the next one. People who text on their phone while you are talking with them. Yeah, we're a little annoyed with that one. Here's a tip for you. One of the things that we do in our meetings here at the Ridge is we just tell everyone at the beginning of the meeting, hey, phone's on silent, face down, middle of the table. Just put them there, and so that way we just kind of face each other and give each other our full presence in those meetings. I do this at home now with dinners. Really helpful, so maybe that tip works for you. Here's the third and last one for us today. People who make plans with someone else while you're with them. Does that drive you nuts? Yeah, some of you guys. Yeah. Some of you, I just described your date from the other night, and you're feeling a little bitter about that one. But, we see these behaviors, and, this is annoying. This can get under our skin. This can drive us a little nuts. But what we're going to look at today is something far bigger than those behaviors. We're going to look at, well, what does it mean to have healthier relationships, or to drop the rope in relationships with people that really, there's a big strain in that relationship. We would look at that person and we'd say, that person is like draining the life out of me. They're just taking energy out of me. They're sucking the joy out of me. Like if we got real honest with ourselves, we would almost say, I'd rather not be in a relationship with that person, but because of life circumstance or whatever's going on, I mean, we have to be there. And there's just like this big wedge, just like in between our relationship. It's really, really strained. Maybe for you, maybe it's just a loud neighbor that's just causing you to be up all hours of the night just because of what it is that they're doing. Maybe for you, it's a coworker that's just really hard to work with. Maybe it's someone in your family, and there's a strained relationship there. Maybe it's a sibling that you haven't talked to in a very long time. Maybe you're trying to blend a family, and because of this person, the blending of the families is not blending very well. Maybe it's with your ex, and there's custody issues that you're just continuing to go through, and it's just a really tough relationship. It's really strained, and you're wondering, well, what could I possibly do with that? I mean, maybe you even wonder, would it even be possible to purposely drop the rope when it comes to them? Because we have natural reactions when it comes to these types of relationships. And our natural reactions tend to go one of two ways. One way that we may naturally react to this person is we go at them and we attack them. We start asking, well, hey, they're coming after me. They're draining me of like my energy. I'm going to go after them. I'm going to drain them of their energy. I mean, I'm going to make it even. And so I'm going to attack them, or I'm going to attack them behind the back of them and just talk about them, around to other people. I'm going to go ahead and get even. And we may see this come up even if we're like not naturally attackers, but because the relationship's so strained, we go ahead and we attack anyways. In fact, this happened to me a couple months ago when a friendship of mine went really, really south several years ago. And it went south for a number of different reasons. This person was at fault. I was at fault. I mean, we both were. And then a few months after that, we found ourselves at this event together. And it was at this event that this person, he just continued to come up to me and just kept talking and talking and talking with me and talking about the things that were causing this wedge between us. And I didn't want to deal with it, then, and it wasn't the right place to be dealing with it. And so I was just trying to ignore this person and kind of go the other way. But this person kept following me and kept talking and kept talking. I felt like this animal, like backed into the corner. And here's what happened. It finally reached a point where I just started unloading. And I just started attacking this person, just telling this person everything that this person did wrong to me and did wrong to other people that I care about. And really what it did is it took that wedge and it just drove it deeper and deeper and deeper into that friendship. I mean, as I said those words, I could just see the wounds and the hurt on this person's face. And really what ended up happening, and what had to happen a couple of years after that, was I had to apologize for that. And apologize for causing that wedge to go deeper. And here's what we learn when we attack. When we attack another person with our words, it belittles that other person. It treats them less than a human. And when you attack, you approach the relationship as if there's going to be a winner and a loser in that relationship. And here's what happens to the relationship every single time. If there's a winner and a loser in a relationship, the relationship loses every single time. A relationship can't have a winner or a loser. And so that's the challenge when it comes to attacking this person. Others of us, we may go to the other side of the coin when it comes to our natural response to this. And we may not attack, we may avoid this other person. And we go towards avoidance. And avoidance works a couple different ways. One is we may try to avoid this person altogether, but what we realize is it's hard to avoid this person and avoid the issues that are straining this relationship, which then causes us to say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to avoid those issues. I'm going to avoid bringing up what it is that's causing this relationship to be strained. And so we try to avoid the conflict, avoid bringing it up, and just let the person just do whatever it is that they're doing. And although I shared a little bit ago of how I attacked, I'm more naturally an avoider. I don't like conflict. I'm naturally a people pleaser. And so when it comes to strains, I'll just try to avoid the issue and just pretend they're not there. And I know I'm not alone, because avoidance looks like this. It's like a spouse that discovers that their spouse is cheating on them, and that spouse apologizes for it, says it'll never happen again, but then a week later it goes and it happens again, and it says, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, and then they go and they do it, and there's this pattern that keeps going on, and it's driving this wedge between that relationship. Or it's this one person who's married, and that person's mom just keeps criticizing and talking bad about their spouse. And you're a avoider, so you're like, well, I don't want to tell mom to knock it off, so I'm just going to let her keep talking and keep talking, even though it's hurting your spouse. And here's what avoidance does. Avoidance doesn't help. It doesn't help you, doesn't help the other person. It enables that other person to keep doing what it is that is causing that strain in that relationship. And so we see this and we wonder, well, is there a way that we can bring healing into the relationship? How do we actually not just pull the rope in a way that would just cause that person to come over to our side, but is there a way that even though this relationship is strained, we can do something on purpose to drop the rope, partner with God to help this person grow and bring healing into this relationship? The good news is there is a way that we can partner with God. The challenging news is that this way is hard. And it's going to feel very hard at first. In fact, it's going to feel very restrictive. It's going to feel very limiting. It may not even feel loving at first. And then the reason why is because of how difficult it is. And so the choice that we're going to have to make, as one of my friends calls it, is we're going to have to choose to pick our pain. Are we going to choose to pick the pain of just letting that relationship just continue to be strained? Or are we going to choose the pain to put in the hard work to bring healing into this relationship? And because you're here today, my bet is you're going to choose to pick that pain, because we want to bring healing into these relationships, and we want to see how we can do this on purpose. And the way that we can do this on purpose is, in a word, we put boundaries in place. And here's what we mean by boundaries. The definition of a boundary is this. It's a line that determines the end of your property. And most of us, I mean, we know the boundaries that comes to our property and to our house and to where we live. My bet is that a lot of you have what I have in my backyard, and that's a fence. Fence right around the property line. And here's the great thing about the fence. It provides the clarity, like, hey, this is the end of the property, and it tells my kids, this is where you can play. Don't go past the fence. Now, imagine if we had no property lines at all anymore. What would it be like? It'd be a mess, because we would just keep saying, hey, why is this person over here in my yard? Why am I over there? You know, we would have no clarity, and therefore it would lead to even greater tension when it would come to where we live. We need boundaries, because boundaries provide the clarity, that provide the freedom to help us show, hey, this is okay, and this is where, no more, it's no more okay. Well, when it comes to us personally, we need boundaries as well, just like our property lines. We need to know where the lines are at that provide that clarity and that provide that freedom. And the good news for us is that several years ago, two Christian counselors, Dr. John Townsend, Dr. Henry Cloud, they wrote this great book called Boundaries. And it was so great that they actually built on that book and wrote several other subsets of it, like boundaries in dating, boundaries in parenting, boundaries for leaders. All of them are really great reads. But what they do is they help us understand the personal lines for us that set up these boundaries to say, hey, this is okay, and then this is not okay. It provides that clarity in the relationships that gives us freedom. And naturally, we get this. I mean, we get this in a number of different areas of our life. One is at work. You know, we know, okay, hey, the clock turns a certain time. It's time for me to go home and rest and reconnect with my family. I mean, that's a personal boundary. Most of us understand and know that, hey, when it comes to our friends and family members, don't call or text in the middle of the night, because the personal boundary, like, hey, they're asleep. It can wait till morning. The challenge for us is, well, when does it come time to put up a boundary, especially in this strained, tough relationship, in a way that can lead towards growth and healing? And the reason why it's challenging for us is we aren't sure if it's loving. We aren't sure if it would work. We almost may wonder, hey, does this go against the very idea of to having this rope and dropping the rope in order to help them grow and bring healing to the relationship. The good news is we can actually see from Paul himself, who wrote the passage that is just driving this series. He actually wrote another passage that helps us understand how we can use boundaries in a way to partner with God to help this other person. And Paul wrote this to a church living in the city of Galatia. And here's what Paul writes to them. He starts off in this part of the passage. He says, hey guys, carry each other's burdens. And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. He says, if anyone thinks they're something when they are not, they deceive themselves. And he's saying, hey, don't think that you are bigger than what you really are. This applies to all of us. And this law of Christ that he's talking about is simply the law of, hey, love other people the way that God has loved all of us. And so this goes back to the idea of going to this other person's side, just like Jesus gave himself for us. And who he's writing to here are those who naturally go into attack mode when it comes to these strained relationships. He's helping us realize, hey, there's a time where we're going to have to let our guard down and go over to that person and help them in a time of need and just for a season. But then a few verses later, it's almost like Paul is changing his tone a little bit. And here's what he says. He says, hey, each one of you should carry their own load. And the word that he's using for load, for some translations, they actually translate it to the word burden. And this is where we can get kind of confused. We're like, hold on a second, Paul. Just a few verses ago, you told us to carry other people's burdens, and now you're saying everyone should carry their own burden. Like, Paul, make up your mind. What is it? Well, what it is now he's talking to the people who naturally avoid. And we avoid the issues, and we enable that person to just carry on their behavior. And he says, there's going to be times where you're going to have to let them figure it out on their own. And you do this by setting up a boundary. And so we might wonder, well, Paul, what is it? When should I step in? When should I set up that boundary? How do I know? And again, this is the brilliance of this passage that Paul is writing, because when we look at the original language of what he's using, we see some clarity here. And the first time when Paul said, hey, I want you to carry each other's burdens, the word that he used, translated for burden here, can actually better be used as the word boulder. And a boulder is this. I mean, it's more than a big rock. I mean, think of something that is just so big and so heavy, there is no way that one person can get down and carry it on their own. I don't care how much you deadlift, even if you pull 500 pounds. I mean, you're not picking this up, and you can't carry this on your own. He says there needs to be a way that many people would come around and they would be able to use their strength together to pick this up and move this boulder. He says if you're going through the season where it's a boulder, someone needs to come in and help them. And what this means is we may look around and we may have to ask ourselves, hey, what is this person going through right now? It may be a boulder season. For example, they may be grieving the loss of a spouse or the loss of a child. They may be going and battling cancer. They may have gone through a sudden divorce and they weren't expecting it. These are boulder seasons that they need someone to step in and help them carry the load. In my family right now, my sister is going through a really just devastating medical health time. And she's a year younger than me. And around Christmas time, she started dealing with some of these significant health issues where she's found herself in the ER a number of times a month. Because of this is impacting her work. She's trying to get things figured out with the doctors. They've ran all the tests. They don't know what's going on. She's actually going to Mayo later this week to try to figure out something, to figure out what they can do and treat her issues. And as a family, we see this. This is a boulder season that she's going through. She's got 3 younger kids that she's raising and hasn't been able to work a whole lot. They've been going back and forth to all of these doctor's appointments. And so as a family, we've thankfully been able to work with their work and neighbors and community, put together meal trains, help with groceries. This is a season where we're like, this is a boulder season. We're going to go in and help them carry this load. That's the boulder. But then when Paul said, hey, each one should carry their own load, the translation that you can use when you look at the original word that he used for this isn't a boulder. He actually used the word that can be translated to a backpack or this idea of a daily load that someone could carry on their own. Like this is the weight that you can and you should carry on their own. And they may try to have you carry it, but then if you're carrying it, now you're carrying more than your daily load. You're carrying your load and someone else's. And so what Paul's helping us understand here is if this is a load that they can carry, they should. And you should let them, and you put that back on them. Meaning some examples of this is, hey, it's on you to pay your own bills. It's on you to manage your own happiness. It's on you to get sober. This is your daily load. It's your responsibility. It's on you. And if you try to put it on me, this is where I need to lovingly set up boundaries to help you grow to carry your own load. And we might feel like, oh, does that really help? Because that just sounds really restrictive at first. But here's the beauty that we find in boundaries, is that when it comes to establishing boundaries, it actually brings freedom, not just for you, but also for them. And it lovingly, it helps them. In fact, studies are starting to show this now with children, is that children, they are craving boundaries. That when you go to a playground and you start establishing, hey, here's where you can play and here's where you can't play, here are the boundaries, here's what they do. They explore more. They have more fun. They know exactly where they can go and where they can't go. And then as the caregiver, the parent or the guardian, whoever's there, they have more freedom because they know exactly where to watch and where to look for when it comes to caring for their kids. Establishing boundaries does bring freedom to them as well as to us. Now, the challenge for us is that when it comes to establishing a boundary and knowing we need to put up a boundary, we know it's going to require some hard work on our side. First, we realize, hey, I need to partner with God. And I want this for this other person, and so I need to ask God to bring about this change and this healing in this other person. And the second thing is we realize this is going to lead to a tough conversation, because we want to lead it to a conversation that will help this person for their benefit. A boundary is not saying, hey, I'm just going to ignore this person and wall them off and never speak to them again without an initial conversation. That's just avoiding. A boundary is used in a way to help this person grow. And Jesus actually talks about this to some of his closest followers, where he told them this. He said, hey, when it comes to this person that you need to set up a boundary for, he says, if your brother actually sins against you, and notice Jesus is using very relational language here. He wants that relationship to grow. And he says, if this person caused you hurt and has strained the relationship, go and show him his fault. Have a conversation about this. And do this all over social media. He didn't say that. Obviously, he said, no, keep this quiet just between the two of you. And if he listens to you, if he grows in response to the boundary you put in place, guess what? You've won your brother over. You've partnered with God to bring about a change in this person's life. I mean, Jesus calls us to something so cool and something so much higher than ourselves, where we get to help this person in a loving way by having this conversation through setting this boundary up with them. And so what we see from what Jesus is showing here, there's a couple things we can keep in mind when it comes to establishing this boundary. The first thing is we want to start from a position of love, where we want what's better for the other person. We want that relationship to be as healed as much as it can. And so we do this in a way that would say, hey, I hope this helps our relationship grow. There's a coworker of mine who did this with me a couple weeks ago, and she did this in a very phenomenal way. And what she did is she pulled me aside. She said, hey, Tyler, you know, I love working here. I love working with you. And I know we want to just work well together, and I know you want that for us, which is true. And so she said, hey, Tyler, just so you know, some of the things that you say to me and around others to me, here's what it communicates. And I don't know if you realize this. It communicates to me that you don't trust me. And I want you to trust me, and I want the most out of here. And hey, can we talk about how we just work together so that way, you know, I feel trusted here, and we can continue to grow together. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I was just so proud of how this person approached it and approached that relationship. That because of that, you know, I think we work together far better. And this person tells me, yeah, it's been going so much better. But it started with her approaching it that way. And so we start from a position of love. And the second thing that we need to keep in mind is, hey, don't be afraid to say no. And for a lot of us, this is going to be the challenge because it's very hard for us to say that word. You might be a salesman's dream when it comes to saying the word no. In fact, right now, we know we're heading into spring season and the bugs are coming, and this year the cicadas are coming, which means here's who's coming before that. The guys on their hoverboards in our neighborhoods to sell us all of the insecticide plants. And you may be the one that has the triple spray for 3 different insect companies, not because you're scared of the cicadas, because you can't say the word no, to the salesmen that are just knocking door to door. Don't be afraid to say no. And if you're like me, the reason why it's so hard to say no is, well, what if they come back with, why not? Well, here's what we can say. It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. Hey, that tone doesn't work for me. This attitude doesn't work for me. This schedule doesn't work for me. This behavior, it doesn't work for us. It works to establish what works and what doesn't work. And so don't be afraid to say no when it comes to establishing this boundary. And then the third thing we want to keep in mind, and this may be the hardest for us, is that when it comes to establishing a boundary, we have to be ready to give consequences if necessary. Because this person, they may not understand our words or even understand the boundary. They may respond to the consequence. And we don't give consequences to punish people. We do this in order to help them grow. But this may mean, hey, if you come back drunk like that again, I'm going to need to leave and go stay the night at my parents'. Or, hey, I'm not going to be able to lend you any more money until you go and take some courses or meet with someone to learn how to responsibly handle this. I'm going to establish this consequence. In fact, and we do this for their growth. In their book, Boundaries, what we see from Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend is that they tell the story of this couple, these parents and their 19-year-old daughter. And this couple is paying for this daughter to go to college. And while she's at college, she's just ignoring her education and she's going out every night to just go party. And she's partying and drinking and do whatever she wants. Her grades just start tanking. And her parents, they start asking her questions about it. They start sharing, hey, this is what's going to happen if you keep going down this path. But she doesn't care. She just keeps partying and partying and partying. And then one night she's home for break and she comes home really late in the middle of the night. And the parents go to her and they ask her, hey, what is it that you did? And she lies about it. And they caught her in the lies and they said, okay, hey, here's what we have to do. And they said, we're no longer going to pay for your college anymore. And we're no longer going to pay for your bills. In fact, you have 2 hours right now to gather whatever it is that you have and leave. And can you imagine as a parent saying that? I mean, that's got to be one of the hardest decisions to ever have to make, to give this consequence. And this, we read that this daughter, I mean, she just starts getting all defensive about this. She's like, you can't do this, you can't do this. And they said, no, we can. This is the right decision. And she gathers her things, and a couple hours later, a friend picks her up, and she leaves. And her parents didn't hear from her for a few weeks, and they said this was just the hardest season. I mean, I can't imagine this as a parent, wondering how your daughter's doing. But then a few weeks later, the daughter shows up on their doorstep and says, yeah, I've been staying at a friend's house on the couch, and I've been realizing that the way my life is going, this isn't where I want it to go. Is there any way that I can earn your trust again? And they said, yeah, let's slowly move towards it. They take her back in. They start giving her some more responsibilities. She starts following through on it, and she starts taking steps. They even get to the point where they can trust her going back to college, and so they send her back. Her parents are followers of Jesus. They kept praying for her. They read, the daughter, she starts making decisions to follow Jesus, and it just starts transforming their relationship where they're growing together, and those wedges in the relationship were beginning to be healed. They said that night, as difficult as it was and as hard as it was the turnaround point in their relationship to lead towards healing. And here's the pushback that we may have when it comes to setting boundaries in place in these difficult relationships is, yeah, I don't know if this feels loving. This doesn't feel very nice to do. And the reason why it doesn't feel nice for you to do is it doesn't feel very nice to this other person. But we can do this in a way for their growth and for their benefit. And when done out of a position of love, God can and will use this to bring about change in their life and bring healing into them. Both those parents and the daughter said that was a life-defining and life-changing moment for us when their parents put that boundary into place. And so, again, we choose to pick our pain. Are we going to let that relationship just continue to be strained? Or will we do this hard work and partner with God to bring healing to the relationship by setting this boundary up in order to help this person grow? And so, let me just ask you, who is that person that you need to lovingly establish a boundary with? Is it that coworker? Is it that neighbor? Is it that person in your family member? I mean, my bet is you know who it is because, as soon as you start thinking about that person, your stomach just starts turning a little bit. And then, as you begin to identify who that person is, well, what is the boundary you need to put in place? What do you need to set in there? Say, hey, if you talk about my spouse again that way, I'm going to have to end that conversation. Or I'm no longer going to be able to give you money to pay for this, with no questions asked. I need you to take steps to be responsible and handle this well. I can no longer receive your kids, whenever, you call in just a moment's notice, because I need to work through a schedule with you to figure this out. What is that boundary that you need to put in place? And if you put that in place this week, let me ask you this. Is that going to cause more tension in your relationship or less? It's going to be less. Because you know how the end of the story is going to work. Yes, they may get upset. Yes, they may get mad, but you're doing this for their benefit as you partner with God. Say, God, would you move in them, lovingly do this in a way that could bring healing into that relationship. It may be hard at first, but it can lead you down the path towards healing. And that's what God wants for us, to take the step, to do something on purpose, to say, hey, I'm no longer going to just pull on this and let this be strained. But I'm going to lovingly put this boundary as a way that I can drop the rope in order for that person to grow. So let's commit to doing this together. Would you pray with me? God, you are so good that you were willing to do the hard work to have a great relationship with us. And you did that through your son, Jesus, who came and lived a perfect life in a way that just completely honored you and became the only one who could take on the consequence of our sin and the times that we've gone our own way. And God, you just went through a way to just give of yourself so that we can have a relationship with you. And God, right now, we have many relationships, God, that there's just a wedge and a strain in that relationship with. It's a tough relationship. It's a tough person to deal with. But God, we know that your heart is for them even more so than our heart is for them. And so, God, I just pray, God, that you would help us see that person the way that you see them. And God, I pray that as we take these steps to set boundaries, to establish what works, doesn't work, God, I pray that we don't do that for ourselves and our benefit. There'll be some freedom and healing for us as we do this. But God, I pray that we do so more for their benefit, to help that person grow, to help that person take steps, to understand how much you are for them. And so, God, we pray for them. And God, we just approach this relationship the same way that you approach it with us. God, we want to drop the rope and we want what's best for them. And God, that may end up being doing the hard things, but God, you've done hard things for us so that we would grow and follow you. And so God, we just pray that as we put these boundaries in place, you'd give us the wisdom to know what to do with this, the courage to do it. And God, help us push through in a way, God, that would honor this person and help this person maybe become a follower of you or take their next step in following you. And so God, we just pray for them. We thank you, God, for giving of yourself for us so that we can have a relationship with you. And it's only possible through Jesus, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen.